some code for these two beacons to run. They'll be running the same thing. We will use the A button to select if they're a starting line or if they're a finishing line. Now, in the previous video, we created this initialized protocol, and the reason I put it in a separate project is so that I can copy it and paste it. To copy it, we click on it, and then we do a Control-C, and then we go to our other project, which is going to be called Dog Speed Beacon. Let's create it. And now we can Control-V to put our protocol in. And then we're going to go ahead and call it. So this is going to set us up with all these messages so that we have them right when we start. Okay, so what do we need now to do this? I'm going to throw this away for the moment because I don't need it right now. I want to switch between a starting line and a finish line. So I'm going to use the A button to do that. And I'm going to need a variable to tell me, is this a starting line or is this a finish line? So let's call that beacon type. There we go. And I'm going to put in here beacon type, and I'm going to set it up to start with as being a starting line. Starting line. Now, when I press the A button, I want it to change to the other type, whatever the other type is. So, first thing I need to do is check to see what type it is now. So, if the beacon type is currently starting line, then I want to set the beacon type to be finish line. And if it's not that, if it's not a starting line, it must be the finish line, in which case I want to set it to starting line. So there we have that. Now I need to display that. And because displaying that is kind of a different sort of category, I'm going to make a function to do that. And I'm going to call it show beacon type. And again, we're going to have some logic here, like this. And basically, it's going to be a lot like this. So if beacon type is starting line, I want to show an S, capital S for starting line. And if it's not a starting line, then I know it must be a finish line, and I can put an F in there. And now I can call this here, and I can call it here. So let's look at our simulator. Starts out with start, switch it to F, switch it back to start. So far, so good. So now we can change it. All right, let's collapse these blocks for now. Format it. Okay, so now we can change it back and forth. So what do we want it to do? And this is where we need that forever block, and we also need an on radio receive block. on radios received string, because a lot of our messages are come in the form of strings, as you may recall. And one thing is missing. I can see that right now, but let's go ahead and continue. So in our start block, we want to start our radio up, and we need to set it to a channel, to a group. And we're going to want a variable to do that. It's going to be constant, so I'm going to make it all uppercase. Radio group. And this is going to also be part of our initialize protocol. And I'm going to set that to some number. I'm going to make it 7 for now. Radio group goes here. There we have it. Okay, now since I've updated our protocol, I'm going to have to go back and change. So I'm going to do copy, Control C. Let's go back to the protocol. Let's throw this away, and let's add that back in. So we always have a fresh copy of what this should be, and we can compare that to what we have in our other piece of code. Hopefully we don't have to update it again. I forgot to put the channel in there, and that's on me. Okay, so what do we want to do when we get a start message and a stop message? Let's work that out right now. And logic equal. These are strings, so we're going to use the string equal. So if our receive string is equal to our start message, and you can see now why we're using these variables, so that they all end up being the same. If I send start message and I compare it to start message, I know it's going to be the same. Even if I misspelled start, it'll still be the same, and it'll work. So if we receive a start message, and we also want to know if we have received a stop message. And we have stop message right there. Okay, so we've got start and stop. Now, what do we need to do? Well, if we receive a start message, we need to start broadcasting. I don't want to just broadcast when I don't need to, because that runs the battery down. So let's grab back that forever loop that we threw away originally, because we didn't need it originally. And let's create a variable. And I'm going to call it broadcast. I'm going to end it with that's all uppercase. That's still uppercase. That's lowercase. I'm going to end it with a question mark. And I'm giving it a question mark because I'm going to set it to a logical value, a Boolean value, true or false. I'm going to set it to false to start with. And then when I need to start broadcasting, I'll set it to true. And when I need to stop broadcasting, I'll set it back to false again. So we can start and stop our broadcasting. Now for that to be functional, we're going to need an if. And for this, because broadcast has a logical value right inside it, we can just drop the variable right in here. It's already going to be true or false. So if we are broadcasting, we're going to go ahead and send our number. Remember, we separated it out so that our beacon, our timing beacon, will have a different event so that it can concentrate on those. And what we're going to send, and this is the tricky part, is the beacon type. So the beacon type is a 0 or 1, and we're sending the beacon type. So that makes it pretty easy, actually. And then we're going to wait a little bit, and I'll tell you why. And we are going to pause for a certain amount of time between beacon signals. And the reason for that is we don't want to send so many radio signals that our timer can't keep up with them. Remember that we have 2 microbits broadcasting at the same time. And if they're not far enough apart, the timer bit will hear both of those at the same time. So it's actually getting twice as many signals as if we just had one each. And I've already done a test, and our microbits can handle radio signals running as fast as possible in a forever loop and in an event handler loop at about 24 milliseconds. So I have set this to about 80, which is going to be approximately 100 every 100 milliseconds. So it's going to potentially receive 10 or 20 signals per second. And that's probably fast enough for what we need. Okay. We're going to pause so that we give our timer a little bit of a break every so often. Now, there's something else we had to do, which was to send back an acknowledgement. And sending back an acknowledgement is kind of a different thing. So I'm going to create a function. I'm going to call it acknowledge message received. Hopefully I spelled that correctly. If not, oh well. Okay, so I've received the message, and this is going to depend on what type of beacon we are. So I'm going to put that in there. And once again, we're going to ask, are we? No, I don't want that one. I don't want that one, but I can actually use it. Oh, there you go. I want starting line. And I want this to be, I guess I didn't really need to copy it, did I? In fact, I don't want to copy it. Okay. That just shows you, hey, I make mistakes too. So, beacon type equals starting line. We know we're a starting line. We want to send a message, send string. And the message we want to say is acknowledge starting line, if we're the starting line. Now, if we're not the starting line, we must be the finish line. So let's acknowledge the finish line. Now, another thing that we want to do is we don't necessarily want to broadcast at full strength. So let's look at this transmit power. And I'm going to create a couple variables because I'm going to want to send a couple different amounts. So our first level is going to be low power. And I'm going to want that to be a 2. I'm going to set it to about 2, which is not the top. 7 is the top. Low power. And I'm doing this so that our code reads a little bit better. So radio set transmit power, low power. That means we don't have to interpret what the 2 means. So if somebody else is looking at this code, they can look at this and say, oh, set the radio to low power. I know what that means. And when we send our acknowledgement, I want the radio to be at high power. So before I do that, I want to set it to high power. Now I'm going to need another variable. I'll call it full power. And full power is 7. So our radio goes from 0 to 7. So now we can set the power to full power. We can broadcast at a much longer distance when it's set to full power. And then after we do that, we're going to set it back to low power so that as we're broadcasting to the timer, it's not going to, hopefully, it will be able to sense the maximum a little bit easier, and hopefully it won't, the 2 signals will not interfere. They'll be far enough apart. So that's the hope. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. We'd have to do an experiment to find out, but I'm not going to do that now. Okay. So we've got our acknowledgement. Oh, I didn't want to duplicate it. Got our acknowledgement. We want to call it. We'll call it right there. And I'm also going to go ahead and show something on my display. And I want to show a check mark, meaning I'm good. So when it starts, when it gets that start message, it'll send back, I'm here, I received your message, everything is okay, and it'll show a check mark to us. Okay. Here, after we've stopped, I also want to show something on the screen. And what I want to do is show the beacon type, so that when we stop the experiment, it'll go back to showing us S for start or F for finish, instead of the check mark, which doesn't tell us as much as an S or an F. So those changing displays will actually tell us a lot about what's happening with our microbits. And let's see what else we have to do. Forever, radio send. I think that is what we need for now. Now we need to test it. So how are we going to test it? Well, we've tested this part, the start and the finish. We need to test it sending out the beacon. So we're going to need another microbit to do that. So let's call this. And since I'm starting another project, I might as well make it the name that we're going to end up calling it. Oops. Dog Speed is the name of our project, and this particular piece of code is going to be the timer. Okay, so we've created that. And we're going to need to go back and get our dog speed protocol. That's why it's here. Control C. Back to the timer. And here we go. Do we need the forever loop? I don't think so. Okay. So here we need to catch the beacon. So first thing we want to do is initialize our protocol. Set up our radio. Which is why we added the radio group to this. Okay, so we're ready to do that, and we want to receive a number. And the number will be which, is it the starting line or is it the finish line? Okay, so we need to acknowledge that. And I'm just going to go in here to LED, and I'm going to toggle an LED. But I should probably make sure there's a difference, so we can see if it's a start or a finish. So if the number we receive is equal to start line, then we'll toggle the upper left LED. If it's not, then we want to toggle the upper right LED. Okay, so that's what that will do. I believe that's all we need to do. So let's go back, and now, one more thing. We need to set up to test is our dog speed controller. Get rid of that forever. So let's see if we still have. We do. So Control V to get that. We're going to call it. There we go. We're going to set up our radio, start our radio, set the group to be radio group. On button A, we want to send out a string, and that string needs to be the start message. If we press the B button, we want to send out the stop message. Okay, so that will help us test. Now we're not going to test the acknowledgement message with this, but we certainly could. But I'm not going to test that just yet. Okay. So now let's add this to our microbits. Okay, so this is the control, dog speed controller, which is this plum color. Let's download that. All right. That's this one. We need now to grab our dog speed timer. Let's plug it in. Let's go ahead and download that. And we need a beacon. Plug that in. Grab our dog speed protocol. Nope, I want our dog speed beacon. And if there's anything wrong with it, well, we'll just have to fix it. All right, let's turn these on. Dog speed beacon, showing S for start. Nothing yet. And start this up. This doesn't show anything. Now we're going to push the A button. And as you can see, we're getting that. Okay, now if we push the A button here on our beacon to turn it into a finish line, we see the other pulsing. And we can go back and forth. So that's exactly what we want it to do. So I believe our beacon is working. Okay. So our next video, we're going to want to try and maybe program the timer. So thank you for watching.